A few years ago, I was spending some time with friends exploring old, supposedly haunted places. We're at the Edisto First Presbyterian Church, where a girl named Julia Legare was buried in her family mausoleum in 1852. People reported hearing unearthly screams from time to time, but never investigated the cause of it. 15 years later, when they opened the door to the mausoleum to inter the next family member who had died, they found her corpse huddled in the corner next to the door, with her arms outreached as if she was still trying to find the exit. My friends thought it would be a funny idea to shut the giant stone door, which was originally open, behind me and pick me up in the morning. The bastards left me there. I tried and tried, using all my strength, but I couldn't budge it. It had taken 4 people to put it in place. In the dark, I resigned myself to the night ahead of me. Now, I normally don't frighten easily, but sitting there in the relatively small space, surrounded by a looming pressure I couldn't even begin to describe, the darkness itself seemed to try to consume me. From all around, it felt like weight was pressing against my skin, making it harder to breathe. I sat in the dark for what must have been hours. But then I heard the scratches. They were faint at first, and I was sure it was my imagination, but soon they came more and more frantic as time passed. I huddled up in one of the corners farthest from the door and tried to cover my ears, but nothing could stop the growing cacophony. This all may have lasted for a few minutes, but each second was an unbearable eternity. Then a loud scream echoed through the darkness. It was a wail of unrestrained fear and pain. The scratching stopped. For the first time, I could distinctly make out a girl sobbing to herself, the pitiful gasping of one without a shred of hope left. I felt such sorrow in that moment, such pain, that I think I forgot how to be afraid. In my heart, all of her suffering seemed to resonate. Inexplicably, I found myself apologizing aloud for everything that happened to her. Hell, a part of me wanted to reach out and feel for a body to hug. I couldn't bring myself to do it, for fear that I would truly find one. I don't know whether or not she heard me or was even aware of my presence. The sobbing continued, and I could again hear her fingers against the stone slab that was the tomb door. I fell asleep at some point, which I felt was a merciful gift from the fates. I'm not sure how long I was out, but I was woken up by a loud thud as the door slammed against the ground outside. I could tell from the light gray outside that daybreak was near, so I must have slept for at least a few hours. I stumbled outside and went to a small unlocked prayer house. I think previously it was a segregated mini-church, but regardless, I leaned against the door and waited nervously until my friends arrived. I approached them as they clustered around the fallen door. 2 of them were kneeling next to it with faces of shock. There were bloody streaks covering the interior of the door, some with light scratches from fingernails, and many without. I think now that she must have shrieked when they broke away from her hands, but I can't be sure. At first they looked at me and checked my hands, then nervously glanced at one another. I was rightfully pissed with them, and told them every detail of what I remembered, wanting them to know what I had been put through. Finally, after I grudgingly got into the car and we were seated to head back, someone spoke up. A friend said to me, "We were afraid to say anything, but look at your face." I later found out that many times people had tried to permanently seal the entrance to the mausoleum, including enough heavy locks and chains that would require heavy equipment to remove it, only to have it found torn open, with the door laying on the ground once more. This was in the 1980s, the last attempt of many through the decades. It seemed like some force was ensuring that it was impossible to ever repeat the mistakes of the past. This is something that I am understandably quite grateful for, but to this day, I am chilled to the bone when I think of what happened that night. When I reached from the back seat and adjusted the rear view mirror, I saw that there was blood caked on my face. Just like the streaks upon the stone slab, there are dark red lines on either side, as if someone had gently cradled my face with torn fingers as I slept that night, feeling the warmth of another for the first time in over 100 years.